Hey guys, welcome to Zoomer Money. I'm River, and today I want to address what all you fucking and today I want to address what all you out-of-date boomers are saying about my precious Bitcoin. I'm sick, but all right. Well, all joking aside, let's get into the basics first. And I assume that most of you know already that Bitcoin is a digital currency or cryptocurrency, if you rather, that can be transferred around between devices, but I've noticed that there are a ton of misconceptions being spread around by the plebs, and what I've noticed is that most people I talk to, especially those that aren't really in the crypto space, are absolutely convinced that it's some sort of Ponzi scheme or scam. One older gentleman I was talking to, he was driving this really expensive car. It was a 1973 BMW 3CL. They're very collectible, I think, and he was physically revolted just at the fact that I mentioned Bitcoin in passing. And I figure he was either a banker or somebody that almost bought Bitcoin when it was like $10 back in the day and then decided it was stupid. And it's been killing him ever since. But other people I talk to just seem to be convinced that there's some sort of backdoor in the system. And for Bitcoin, eventually the money's going to be sucked out by some anonymous supervillain and we're all going to be left holding the bag. And I have to assume that these people just write off Bitcoin without doing any due diligence or research of any sort, because if they did, they'd know that Bitcoin runs off of a completely decentralized, secure network. Now, you can't really be into Bitcoin without understanding the Bitcoin network and the blockchain. And this technology is really the true genius behind the whole thing. And it's what differentiates Bitcoin from all these other copycat shitcoins, they call them, like Terra Luna. Hopefully you've heard of the Terra Luna crash if you know about crypto a little bit. And Shiba Inu coin or Cardano. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shitcoins out there now, and they're all basically just copies of Bitcoin. But let's talk about the blockchain. And this blockchain is a decentralized ledger that records every single Bitcoin transaction ever in history, and it's extremely secure. The code is updated every 10 minutes, and since each record is connected to the one before it and the one after it, if anybody theoretically tried to hack the Bitcoin system, they'd have to alter every single block of code before the 10-minute window where the blockchain updates, making it basically physically impossible. So why is Bitcoin the best choice of cryptocurrency, certainly, and possibly even currency altogether? Well, for one, it's completely borderless, meaning you can send it to your grandma in Timbuktu on the Lightning Network nearly instantaneously with a minuscule fee. Now, this is a huge opportunity for, say, immigrants that are sending money back home to care for their families without the banks charging arm and leg rates for the transfer, and on top of that, having to wait for 3 or 4 days for the money to go through and to be able to access those funds. And with people coming over, for instance, to the United States from South America, and they're leaving family behind and coming here to get jobs so they can support them, this is technology with very high utility. On top of that, Bitcoin isn't subject to inflation because there's a fixed supply. Only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist. So say for somewhere like Zimbabwe or Argentina, where the paper money supply is completely debased, where a loaf of bread can cost $50 in the morning and then $150 later that afternoon, they can keep their money in Bitcoin instead as a far more stable option. The last ever Bitcoin will be mined in the year 2140, and it's going to take 40 years of effort to mine that one Bitcoin. Once this last Bitcoin is mined, the mining system will shut down. You won't be able to mine any new Bitcoin. The 21 million that were supposed to exist will exist, and you can't print any more from thin air like with the fiat money system, making it deflationary instead of the opposing inflationary, let's say, US dollar system. Now, let's talk about the mining aspect. And obviously, I don't mean the sustainable electric car battery kind of mining. You do this kind of mining with powerful computers. And these miners, as they're called, compete against each other to solve very complex math puzzles in order to be the first ones to crack the code, and then in return, they're rewarded with the freshly minted Bitcoin. It's like a digital gold rush, you could say, and it keeps the system very secure by keeping the introduction of new Bitcoin completely stable and decentralized. Unlike in the dirt, overmining is never going to be an issue with Bitcoin because as more miners join the competition for the Bitcoin, the more difficult the mining becomes for everybody involved. If the mining becomes so difficult, let's say, and there's so many people that join that it's no longer profitable compared to the price of electricity and the components for the mining machines and people's time, then inevitably some of these miners are going to quit and the difficulty of mining will back down. Now here's why we love decentralization. No big shots can pull the strings, and your money is completely your own. Nobody can tell you how to use it, or when to spend it, or where to spend it. I don't know if you've ever gone to a bank to withdraw a large amount of cash, but if they even give it to you, they'll interrogate you about what it's for and give you a huge problem, especially now. I mean, I understand that there are like drug dealers out there or whatever, but it's really annoying. I mean, if I want to say take out $100,000 in cash so that I can strip naked and bathe in my shower tub combo with $5 bills, that's really nobody's business but mine. Okay, well let's talk about the people that are skeptical about Bitcoin, like bankers and these boomers and the more classic style of investors. Now, some of them are kind of stuck in their old school ways, and they're worried about the wild swings involved with Bitcoin and the lack of regulation, with some merit, obviously, but more and more serious investors and wealth managers, as well as these big hedge funds like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, and these old gentlemen in suits talking about it around a big round table. The general consensus is they're all looking into Bitcoin as a more serious option for investment, and especially with the word going around that a Bitcoin ETF is likely going to be approved by the SEC sometime in the near future, it's getting to be on people's radar more and more and being adapted as a more mainstream investment. But here's why you should like Bitcoin most of all. The central banks and the Federal Reserve, the guys that make your precious Benjamin Franklin paper, they're privately owned entities. They're not truly government owned, and they control our money supply, and almost nobody has any idea. The Federal Reserve calls themselves the Federal Reserve because it sounds very official and governmental, but they're truly not a part of the federal government. They just work in tandem with them. Now, for this reason, the paper money system clearly has its flaws. I mean, it's not really backed by anything tangible anymore since Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the government can really print as much money as it wants, whenever it wants, forever. And because of this, our whole system has become based off of cheap debt. And so when the government borrows money, they create new dollars out of thin air. And I'd argue that the U.S. is effectively a privately owned entity by those who hold its debt. Now, if you're skeptical about Bitcoin, or even if you love it more than anything in the whole world, like some of you toxic Bitcoiners out there, you know who you are. It's important to be diligent researching your investments. YOLOing your money into anything is a good way to get wrecked. But this is true for any investment. I mean, buying a house at the peak of the market is not a good idea either. So what do I think? You might as well check out Bitcoin. You know you have the time. Don't lie to yourself. Besides, it's one of the few assets that's actually doing decently at the moment. I mean, all my tech stocks are going sideways pretty much. But it's important to not discredit cash right now either, because with the high interest rates and the economic turmoil that we've somewhat been going through, debt is more expensive, and so your money's good to hold on to, and you can perhaps wait a little bit and find a good place to buy into when the market bottoms out. That's going to be all the thoughts I have for today. Hopefully you got something interesting. And I hope to see you next time on Zoomer Money.